Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome to another episode of Mayapur TV podcast. I'm here with Hema Gopi Mataji, a very brilliant person, and Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Hare Krishna. My name is Hema Gopi Devi Dasi. I'm a disciple of His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj and a mom of two wonderful children and wife. And for the past 20 plus years, I've been serving in various educational institutes in Mayapur and part of many educational initiatives happening here in Mayapur.
That's great, Mataji. It's such an important sector in education, and the children of Mayapur are, so much. It's important that the children of Mayapur, they grow up with the proper education, with samskaras. And so, how did you come into this education? What drew you towards this education program?
I would say two things. One is necessity. When you're a mom, you're very entangled. Indian moms, especially, children, homework, everything, we're part of, as if we are doing schooling again. No? So initially it started with, when my children started going to school, I became very involved with their academics. And the second, and in fact, it should be said as the first, was the instruction of my spiritual master. He had instructed me to be doing something. So everything I have done till today, whatever service I've done in different schools, they're all direct following the direct instructions of my spiritual master. He somehow saw that I could do something there, so he encouraged me to do that.
Wow. Yeah, serving Guru Maharaj is really like, you feel like you want to give it all for Guru Maharaj, such an inspiring figure. Which brings me to wonder, who are your inspiring figures that, it urges you to become so invested?
Could I say more than one?
Yes.
Okay. So my first inspiration is Srila Prabhupada. Something that attracted me to him right in the first moment I learned about him. I started reading his books. Is his nature as a very non-judgmental person. He's a teacher. He's a spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
And he taught Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna became a household word because of him. All over the world, everybody knows it. But something that attracted me to him is this quality of being non-judgmental. So only when a teacher is like that, oh, you're not going to be able to do it, or you're not capable of doing it. So when we do that, we actually harm the kid. So I've learned that Srila Prabhupada is my first inspiration. What kind of perfect teacher he is. So he's my first inspiration. And then I would think of my spiritual master, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj. And he's a person who teaches by example. He never says like, you should study Srila Prabhupada books. He got Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, did Bhakti Vedanta, did Bhakti Sarvabhauma. He read Prabhupada's books so systematically. And by his personal example, when he says, you please do it, then it is so much more inspiring for us to do. So I do feel that teachers should be so, if you want your students to be punctual, you should not be late.
Yeah.
So I tell my kids, if I come in late for 1 week, I'm not going to harangue anyone about punctuality. Otherwise, if you come late, I'll give like a whole lecture about why it's important to be punctual and so on. So teaching by example, so that's very inspiring for me from my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj.
Yeah.
And another person who comes to my mind is His Grace Atul Krishna Prabhu.
Oh,
And
yes.
I was his Bhakti Shastri student. I did some part of my Bhakti Vaibhav and Bhakti Vedanta courses with him. And Srila Prabhupada introductory course, I studied under him. And something I noticed from him as a teacher is his ability to keep the cognitive load with the student.
Yeah.
He will never take over the learning and he'll like, I'm going to tell you everything and you will know everything. He is like, you are going to learn. So
Yeah.
he creates assignments, tasks where the students are interactively involved and the learning is much more personal. It is not like just you sit and lecture. It's very difficult to do, but when I'm listening to his presentations, I not only observe and learn the philosophy and the teachings, but I very keenly observe what are the teaching methodologies he's using and why did he choose it and how effective it is to deliver the content. So I just simply admire the way he keeps the load with the kids. Learning is yours to have, not like I have to bring something. He's a great facilitator, and I think that's a very important quality of a teacher. So I mean, the list is infinite, but on top
Yeah.
of my head, I remember
It's so
this.
important to have these kind of figures, isn't it? Like when we have these kind of case studies and these kind of figures, and we see how they lead by example, it inspires you to, like, even in the pujaris, and when you're doing deity worship, there are so many such exemplary pujaris that inspires you, like Pangjangri Prabhu, His Grace Jananivas Prabhu. For 50 years, they're just dedication, this hard work, everyday consistency, and it just inspires you to keep growing yourself.
Yes.
So you mentioned Srila Prabhupada as one of your inspiration, Mataji. What is the goal Srila Prabhupada is trying to achieve with education in ISKCON?
Um, if we look at the 7 aims, we will see repeatedly, Prabhupada uses the word educate to educate people. So, Srila Prabhupada does not see Krishna consciousness as a sect or a cultural activity. He says Krishna consciousness is a scientific process. It's a science. Krishna consciousness is science. And science, there's nothing more educational in modern days than science. STEM,
Yeah.
science. We are right there. So in from what I have read from Srila Prabhupada and heard from his from different devotees or followers of Prabhupada, I understand that the core is simple. We need to train everyone, not just the children. All of us need to get trained to always remember Krishna and never forget him.
Right.
So I feel that everything we are doing in Krishna consciousness, we may start Gurukula, we may start farm community, we may go on Harinam, we may organize festivals, but the core message is somehow or other we should bring people to that level that we will always remember Krishna and never
Yeah.
forget him. And if we train children from a very young age to live like that,
Yeah.
without having any of those material distractions that are happening in the outside world, for them to continue in that path, the success rate is much higher, and that's perfection. And that's what Prabhupada wanted for our children, I feel.
International Society for Krishna Consciousness. You mentioned how our children, we have our children in our society, and obviously when they're growing up, they're going to schools, they're getting material education as well. Some people may argue, that pursuing science is important, pursuing engineering is important, architecture is important. Maybe I'll do all these spiritual educations later. So what is this? What is the difference between this spiritual education and material education, and how can we balance that?
Mm. What my experience has shown me is that when you give somebody Like, for example, if I give you 100 rupees, have I given you 10? Have I given you 50? Have I given you 90? So when you give spiritual education, you have given everything a person has to know. There is no separate way of, it for me sounds not very realistic to think that this is spiritual and this is material. When somebody has a proper spiritual vision, there is nothing that can actually be like a material thing for them. And children who are spiritually educated, they can take anything that is material in this world and the so-called material things, and they can utilize it perfectly in the service of Krishna.
Exactly.
So there is they are not two different things. One is included in other. Material knowledge is included in spiritual knowledge.
Yeah.
So when we are looking at spiritual education, and if we present it in a wholesome way, like how Srila Prabhupada did, we actually are able to produce children who are also materially successful.
Yeah.
When you give 100, you don't have to separately make an endeavor for seeing if they have the 50.
Yeah.
You can be rest assured that 50 is automatically included. And I have many students and my own kids who have been trained to live in Mayapur Dham, attend temple programs, chant, and take only prasadam. Whatever is so-called, no drugs, no illicit sex, no gambling, no exposure to any of those things. And I've seen them go out and become very successful in many of the material fields, as they call it. They're very successful and they get good jobs and they continue their Krishna conscious education. So there should be no fear that we will lose something when we are focusing on spiritual life. That fear shouldn't exist.
I mean, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, right, that use whatever you're good at, use that in service unto me, right? And so what we can understand from this is, if you want to pursue science, if you want to pursue astronomy, if you want to pursue whatever you're drawn to, you can pursue that. But at the same time, you have to be Krishna consciousness, understanding the whole picture, that that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. You're the servant, serve the servant of the servant, and your purpose is to serve Krishna through all these qualifications. Yeah. What? Yes, Manaji.
No, I was just saying, and it's so you will be surprised how everything can be part of, like I know a kid who does sports science, and if you ask her how do you think it can be utilized in Krishna's service, she has like a whole vision of how, I couldn't even think of things you can do in Krishna's service after you study sports science and law. I know a kid who's studying psychology, and if I was talking, how do you think it can be utilized in Krishna's service, the service of community devotees, and the ideas they brought out, it was amazing. So there is nothing in this material world that a devotee child cannot actually learn and utilize in Krishna's service. Every poison can be, if purified, is offerable. So
and we need these skills. Like, we need devotee lawyers, we need devotee doctors. Otherwise, there's this mode of ignorance comes in with the materialists, and then the tendency to cheat and the propensity to lie and all these things come. Where devotees will have the sattvic qualities, the gunas, so they will try to help the society. A doctor will actually try to cure the devotees. So I remember when the coronavirus happened, our doctors were so instrumental. So many devotees were affected and they got treatment.
Sure.
So it's such an important thing. So, Mataji, as a teacher yourself, what methods of teaching have you personally experienced to be the most effective to our children? Because sometimes they're not interested to understand about spiritual life and all these things. So, what methods do you try to use to have the most effect?
Um, uh, so when we talk about education, we talk about giving them some academic knowledge, math, science, whatever else they need to study or want to study. And we talk about helping them develop consistent spiritual habits, have some taste for Krishna conscious. And um, academically, we have a lot of research that has been done to prove that not every learner is the same type of learner. So, for example, let's say I'm teaching about life cycle of a butterfly. First it's like a larva and then pupa and then it becomes a butterfly. So that concept can be taught to a musically inclined child in the form of a song. A kinesthetic child who loves moving and action, you might just make them demonstrate, show me a lava, show me how pupas, like put your limbs together, and butterfly, put your dupattas out and flap, and the same concept they learn in a different way.
Yeah.
So just like and this is well established concept that there are different types of intelligences, and accordingly if you present the knowledge in a suitable way towards that kind of intelligence, that particular kid with that intelligence will learn it very easily.
Yeah.
And the same applies for spiritual practices. I might be someone who's very keen in studying scriptures.
Yeah.
But I, as a teacher, should never think that every student who's not doing Bhakti Shastri is not a devotee. Somebody becomes super enthusiastic to cook and offer and eat prasadam.
Yeah.
Somebody loves kirtan. Somebody loves to read and study.
Yeah.
And somebody loves making jewelry, dresses, and worshipping deities, So we should have all these avenues available for devotee children,
Yeah.
so that they can just uh, feel it and be inspired by whatever process is. Any one process is enough to take you to Krishna. And of course, chanting is important. That is something could be a little challenging,
Yeah.
because it requires discipline. You have to sit half an hour. For small kids, we would say like sit half an hour. As they grow bigger and they're hitting 16 rounds, it might be like almost 2 hours. We may not be able to do it in school, but the initial days where we sit and make it as a slot of the day where this is done, and it's a practice that we repeatedly do, and at some point it becomes like a habit. It becomes so natural.
Yeah.
Wearing dhoti or having shika, or or just like how breathing is natural. In the same way, chanting becomes something very normal, something that we have as a part of our day. And like I eat prasadam, I sleep, I do work in a computer, I chant. So
Yeah.
that requires some kind of slotting
Training.
of time, and repeatedly, day after day, and reward for kids who have done it with nice enthusiasm and had great attendance in the program. But apart from that, everything else we should allow kids to explore, and we should never judge like, oh, she is not doing Bhakti Shastri, not a good devotee. She is not inclined to doing deity worship, not a good devotee. They're all, everybody is potentially a devotee. We just need to find out, like how we find out what kind of intelligence. Are you a kinesthetic kid? Are you a musical kid? Are you a visual kid? And like that, are you a prasadam kid? Are you a kirtan kid? Are you a bhakti a person who loves to read scriptures? Just need to find, and we can enthuse them, and it will be more meaningful for them that way also. And that's been my observation over years.
I mean, I remember growing up in the Gurukul, and it's a multicultural group, and some people come from different backgrounds and different interests, and somebody likes, like how you said, somebody likes sports a lot, somebody likes kirtan a lot, somebody likes to eat a lot. But I have noticed that each and every one of them have something good in them, and they're all really like nice guys ultimately, even though they have different interests. So like, for example, math, people find it very boring, but I've seen some YouTube videos where they explain the math in a very creative way, and it's easy to understand and becomes fun. So as teachers, it's such a important thing to understand this, I guess, that each student is different, like you're saying, and you have to be different with, and different have to approaches with different people. uh, so Mataji, what is the role of parents and in this? Or what is the role they are playing? Because I guess they have to play a very instrumental role, because once the school once the kids are back from school at home, they're spending the rest of the time with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So how do the parents and the teachers collaborate together? What is the role, different roles they're playing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are like the two tracks of a train. So the most important thing there is alignment. Where do these two tracks want to go? If the parents want to go right and the teachers want to take the kid left, and the kid is not consulted in any of that, definitely we are just going to have some very miserable scenario. So the main goal of parents is to understand what is the desire the child has. The main role of parents is to understand that, understand the nature of the kid. What is that my child wants? What is he or she good at? And choose a school or an institute that caters to the child's need in that way.
Yeah.
You should never go into a school where let's say you're taking them to some gurukul. In South India there are many gurukulas, and they just from morning to evening they teach you to learn mantras, yagyas, cooking for the temple kitchen, so many things they're training you into. And after that, if you just sit and have parents teachers meeting and say, yeah, but what about NEET? I want my child to be a doctor. Yeah, but then you're not in the right place. So the first point is that you should know what your kid is inclination is.
Yeah.
And the second point is to place the kid in a situation, in an institute or school which caters to that need. And only then there will be some kind of alignment. Otherwise it is going to be like every track of the train goes in some direction, and the kid itself is like the train who has to reach some goal, be totally lost.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing, as parents, it's also, I feel for them, that they have to figure out what's the nature of the child, and what is the best things for them, and if they're putting them to Gurukul to get nice Brahminical education, and then they shouldn't think about sending them abroad, to some school or college or something. That life is meant for Brahminical studies, and he becomes a teacher when he grows up, and he imparts knowledge to the society, things like that. Yes, Mataji, what are the challenges that we're facing right now in ISKCON in terms of this education? What are the challenges?
Yeah. The like we have to as I pointed out, you should know the nature of your kid. You should often parents do not consider the nature of the kid. That is too small, or she's too small. I know what is best. In my home, everybody is a doctor. In India, it's very predominant, like you're a doctor or an engineer, like at some point, the whole population is going to be like 50% doctor, 50% engineer instead of 50% male and female, like it's so driven by this kind of what is very popular and what is very so-called respectable professions, so much. Maybe it's not so pronounced in West, but and I think India is slowly becoming better too. But that is one thing that often is a challenge, because we may have in schools kids who don't like to do whatever is that we are trying to put as a program for them, and they struggle, they rebel, they misbehave, and none of it is their fault, because you are trying to squeeze them into a mold that is not fitting them, something. So that is the first challenge that I've often seen, because it is not the child's aspiration, it is more the parents' aspiration, so that often creates a lot of confusion. That's one thing I have seen.
Yeah.
And lack of institutes, it is, as much as it's difficult to figure out the nature of the child, when we figure out, we actually don't know where is such an institute which will cater to the need. So we need lot of educational initiatives. We need to have a lot of them, so all kind of children are catered to. All kind of educational needs are catered to. Catering to a spiritual need is very simple. There is a community centered around temple. You go, you attend Mangalarati, Darshanarati, chant your rounds, offer, take prasadam, and worship deities, you do your sadhana. That is universal, that everybody can do. But when we look at, after I do all of that, when I want to do what I like, where do I get the training? Then we see there is a lot of holes there also. So we need many academic institutions. Like you like the curriculum, but it is too intense for the child, because it may, he or she may not be able to have enough time to do their sadhana. Like they want to become some doctor or engineer, but they cannot spend so many hours, so many things they have to. So then you need something that can have
cater to them.
Both, like you can have this also, fulfill that also, and many things. If we'll zoom into many things like that, we don't have all those tools in a simplistic way. We have many things that work in the material world, but so much of it is not needed actually to achieve what we want to have for a spiritual society. So we need to have many types of curriculum, many types of institute, and that is something lacking. And then, okay, you figured out what you want, you found a school, you got yourself educated and all, and you step into society, you don't have a place to utilize that. Okay, now I'm a qualified, I can be a kinesthetologist, I want to be a psychologist, whatever, you become something. And where do you place that kid? In our community, we don't know. Psychology is like this mental problem, it's mind is not something to, and this is body problem, we do not think about bodily problems, like so much of we limit ourselves with the philosophy per se, and we don't allow everything and anything to be brought into Krishna conscious spectrum,
Yeah.
that is also a very limiting factor. So children are like, at some point they become frustrated, why can't I utilize it? Why is it seen as something that cannot be used in Krishna's service? Then they go away somewhere where they could use it and where they find themselves useful,
Yeah.
so, and then you've maybe not lost in the true sense of the word, but in some level you lose, because they distant themselves, so those are things that I've seen, that over years I'm seeing, if only we had this too, if only we had that too, so I'm very grateful to all the devotees who are trying to fill in these gaps,
Yeah.
anytime I come across where devotees make some initiatives to fill some gaps, you might have heard of Arudha Mataji. She has written study guides for studying Bhagavatam and all, so she is trying to establish a Bhakti Shastri program for kids. So even if you are in some school where there is no temple or anything, you're just going to a government school or whatever, and you can come back, and with the study guide and with whatever she's trying to create, you can still get your Bhakti Shastri alongside your,
That's
parents have
nice.
that, so when devotees do those things, I feel very grateful, and I in my own little way, I spread the word.
Yeah.
So it becomes
That's nice. You're
some
doing that.
tool, that
I mean,
everybody gets benefited.
if it's working and if it's a successful project, then it should be, that word should be spread. And this is the purpose of asking you this was, so that in future ISKCON can establish such institutes for these kind of students. There's different students in different situations, and how to cater for them. That's one of the things we should have in our minds. Also, how social media has an impact on our students. How there's so much distraction. How do we deal with that? That's one of the biggest challenges, that the teachers are facing in education. So, Mataji, if you had one piece of advice to give for an educator who is watching, or if you had one piece of advice to give to educators out there, what would that be?
A child who comes to me as I'm his or her teacher, if I wasn't in that role, let's say I just see him or her in a park, no connection, just like that, and I see him, or he or she sees me, we wouldn't turn and have a second glance, we will just have our own path, own way, there's no way we will be relating with each other in any context.
Yeah.
But when you take a responsibility to be a child's teacher,
Yeah.
the parents just actually interest and take and give that many hours of the child's life in your hand,
Yeah.
so that is like a big responsibility, and once you become aware of it, that whatever I do with this child in this 50 minutes class or 40 minutes class, and it's not about math, science and English and all that, it is also about character. And children don't learn from what you teach, they learn by seeing what you do, so that has a greater impact. If we would ever sit and think of who is my favorite teacher, it will be often to do something with the how personally they were caring for you, like you were struggling in math and you found that one teacher who made it fun for you, you will remember him or her.
Yes.
or you are struggling with some, like teenage, mind is troubling or something.
Yeah.
That particular teacher who found you, patted your shoulder, talked to you, gave you that time, gave you that, not the advice, but the guidance. So, people are ready to give advice, but teenagers like, I have enough for it. So that guidance, so they are the impactful ones. So we should be very conscious that actually we are responsible for this child's life, not in just in this 40 minutes, but whatever we deliver in that 40 minutes is going to be something that is going to build them, their character for many years to come. So we should be those teachers who make every 40-minute class, every 50-minute class count. That when they go out of the class, when they go away from you, they
Yeah.
would still remember you fondly. We should make it. It is not about great lesson plan. It is not about the tools you have. I have this manipulatives, I have this chart, this. It's not about that. It is about the sincerity with which you want to connect with the child.
Wow.
And that's what is going to continuously impact the child even after the 45-50 minutes is over. So we should go into the class with that mindset. That's my humble request
That touched my
teachers.
heart, Mataji. I mean, that's such a way to and perceive this. This the being a teacher is not just slideshows and lesson plans. It's to understand that you have the responsibility of the child in your hands and how to become impactful. To make an impact in his life, to guide them, not to teach them, give them advice. Well, thank you so much, Manaji. I think we're coming to an end of our discussion. If there's anything, the audience, if you want to say anything in the comments below, these questions are not just for our discussion, it's for actually to start a discussion. And if you want to answer these questions in the comments, if you want to give your opinions, please feel free to do. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Manaji.
Thank you for having
Hare
me.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.